Hey, it's Storyworthy. Today on the show, comedy writer Dan O'Shannon talks about his first heist.
I spot a Playboy magazine. Now, I've spotted them before, believe me. No one's looking, and I sort of take it down and flip through it, and I see some pictures, and every cell in my body now starts telling me loudly, you want to own this magazine. And I'm thinking, I want to own this magazine. And so I needed a plan, and I've always been a planner. So the plan I come up with is that I'm going to buy an issue of the local newspaper, which was the Painesville Telegraph. I'm going to slide the magazine into the newspaper, and then I'm going to buy the newspaper. Now, the newspaper is only a dime, which gives me 15 cents change, which is exactly the cost of a shake, a chocolate shake. So I'm going to get porn and ice cream. This is going to be the greatest trip of my life, right?
Today on the show, comedy writer Dan O'Shannon talks about his first heist. Stay close.
Hey, it's Dan O'Shannon, and you're listening to Storyworthy.
Welcome to Storyworthy. My name is Christine Blackburn, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Whether you're a longtime fan of the show of 12 years or you're a new fan, welcome to Storyworthy. I do hope you guys enjoyed the show last week with comedian Roz Brown. Roz Brown told a fast and interesting and amazing story. And she told me at the top, she said, this is the story everybody wants to hear. And then when I heard the story, I was like, oh yeah, this would be like party starter story. Basically, I want you to go back and hear it, but she was married for 17 years. And then one day her dog brings out a DVD that is titled My Special Pics. And it's like her husband's DVD. This is how he titles Dan's, his mouth is already open. This is how he titles his secrets, right? My Special Pics. So Roz puts it in the player, finds him in all these compromising positions with all these women and, porn. And then the dog brings out 2 more DVDs. And anyway, so she confronts him and okay, now it's time for divorce, right? They've been married 17 years. She's the breadwinner. He's going to get everything or, half of everything she has. And then something happens at the end and I'm not going to tell you, but guess what? He didn't get anything. So you'll have to listen and figure this out for yourself, but not today, you guys. Stick around today because I'm talking to comedy writer Dan O'Shannon, and Dan brings forth the topic, My First Heist. My first heist. Dan O'Shannon, it's so nice to see you.
It's nice to see you. And I want to hear that story now. My story isn't as good as that one. It's a great story.
It is. It's really an amazing story.
I love the dog doing this, by the way. That's great. I just love the dog part.
I know. We titled it that. Well, I think the name of the show was My Dog, found out. No, that could be that's too long. But it's something about, that would be too long. But it was something about, the dog is the one that discovered the porn. So.
Wow.
My first heist, though, this is also a very good topic, and it's something I haven't told you yet. But when I was 13, I already know that you told me your story happens when you're 13. Mm-hmm. And it just so happens that when I was 13, I also stole something. I was with my friends at the Northway Mall. I'm going to set it up for you.
All right.
The Northway Mall had a parrot cage in the middle.
Oh, my gosh.
Which was awesome.
Yeah.
You can even help me name the stores. Spencer's Gifts. Uh-huh. Yes, of course.
Yes. Hot Sam's, maybe, if you had those. B. Dalton Bookstore.
That's right.
Forever 21.
No, I don't think Forever 21. Woolworths was one of the anchors. I remember Woolworths, and Horns.
I was going to say Horns, and in ours there was a place you could eat called Josephine's, like Joseph.
Oh yeah, that was very fancy. I think if you ate at Josephine's, you had to wear gloves. I think.
Yeah.
That was old school, where they had department stores where women, I guess men as well, would shop and then have lunch in the middle of the store in a windowless room that looks like this dining room. It was just be very little character. Yeah. What was that?
We didn't have time to actually go to a different room to eat. We're shopping. We're hungry.
I know, but it was always supposed to be like fancy, like pastries and tea.
Yeah. I guess, I think I've heard stories of this, like women I know who they say that when they were young, they would go with their grandmothers and dress up and go to the May Company or whatever. And they'd they literally wear the white gloves and do some shopping. And then they'd have like their little tea or whatever in the store. And it was kind of a thing. It was a day out for like girls and their either mothers or grandmothers or thing.
Yeah. Wow. That is that's hard up for some entertainment if you ask me.
It was before television or books or fun was invented.
Or fun. That's so funny. So, what was I talking about? Oh, okay. I'm in the Northway Mall. I'm with my friends, Joan Kelly and Kimberly Eddy, and we're in Woolworths, and we go down the escalator, and they had a pet department in Woolworths. It was kind of lame because it was just like fish, gerbils, small animals, but still it was kind of fun. And I had the bright idea to reach into a hamster cage and pull out a hamster and put it in my members only jacket in my windbreak. The idea was we're going to take this hamster, we're going to take it to school, put it in Nanine Huygens' locker, and then when she opens the locker, the hamster runs out. Boom. That's the joke.
And no thought to the life of the hamster after the punchline.
No.
The hamster will just go live in the wild, and it'll be a story to tell for the hamster.
Come on.
You're not going to believe what happened to me.
Back in the 70s, animals didn't even have problems. Didn't you know that?
No, they didn't.
There were no issues.
No.
Anyway, so we decided. Then we walked out of the store, and halfway up the ramp toward the National Record Mart. All of a sudden, this lady, a heavyset lady in like the Woolworths apron, starts coming after us. Stop those girls! Stop those girls! That one has a hamster in her pocket. Like it was that frickin', she laid it out. And then my friends stop, and I'm like, why are you stopping? Keep running. But they stopped, so then I had to stop, and I'm feeling, the hamster is, of course, wet itself at this point,
Yeah, sure. Sure, it was a hamster, right, yeah.
Yeah, it was all about the hamster. It had, like, chips on its feet. It was so gross. And so then we walk back to the store, and then they take us up to the snack counter. There was a snack counter with balloons above where if you wanted a banana split, you could pop a balloon, and in there would be the price of the banana split.
Mm-hmm. Oh, neat. I want that.
I want a banana split balloon.
I want to go there.
Yeah, it would be like 89 cents, 69 cents, or like 1 penny. What? You got a free Sunday.
But then there's the $150 one that nobody wanted to get that. You took a chance, though.
Hey, I don't care where you get the money.
You pop the balloon. That's $150, kid.
Go to the bank. Go to the bank. I know there's no ATMs yet. Go to the bank.
You go and wait.
Okay, so wait. Okay, so we are now put at that snack counter, and the manager comes out, and we're all in the chairs, and he goes, "Today it's hamsters, girls, and tomorrow cars." And I remember thinking,
does he think your pockets are?
I remember thinking, I just doubt that. I just doubt that so much. Then he called. Yeah, nah. And then I saw him went to the phone on the wall, and he called all of our parents, and my dad picked us up, and we dropped the other girls off at home. And then my dad said, "What happened?" And I blamed the whole thing on Joan Kelly. Isn't that terrible?
Is this now the first time you're coming clean on this?
I think I might have admitted it to one or two husbands, but that's it.
Right. And now the world knows your shame.
And then I got home, and my mom was on the couch, like with a cold compress on her head, like a bag of peas or something on her head. And she's like, out of 6 children, I'm not surprised. One went wrong. Jack, is she home? Jack.
But did she have a fainting couch? That's how I picture it. It's so dramatic.
Right. It was more of a chase, is what it was.
I see.
Anyway, so I have had, and then, listen, in church, the next time we went to confession, which was like every other week, because you can imagine how evil.
Oh, the sins pile up. You got it. If you don't go every week, then like you're going after a year and you're there for 6 hours.
And it's like you have to do 45 Hail Marys and 37 Hail Mary, or Our Fathers. Now, Our Fathers took forever.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Anyway, but in confession, yeah, I had to say, bless me, Father, for I've sinned. I took a hamster from Woolworths.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what the outcome there was, but I still remember it. I feel it. I had a heist in my life, and I'm anxious to hear about your heist.
My heist, I feel my heist pales in comparison to yours. It's
don't tell me yet. Don't tell me yet.
Okay. Oh, yeah. You threw all the other stuff. I forgot about the schedule.
Do I have to bring back the
paper? Do your stuff where you talk a lot.
Do I have to bring back the paper?
Blah, blah. Yeah. Come on. Let's go. Right. People are listening.
So listen, I know you live in Cleveland now, and it's interesting because, a lot of people come out to LA and they don't leave LA, or I don't know. I guess people do leave LA. If they do leave, they usually go to another part of California, or maybe Colorado, or maybe I don't know,
Portland,
somewhere
someplace
beautiful, right?
Yeah.
But you chose Cleveland, Ohio.
I did.
It's interesting.
I did. Well, I have to say, I do love the area. I love the changes in seasons. I love the weathers. California, it's beautiful outside, but it's like with everything else, California, that's amazing. They could only afford one day weather-wise, and they keep rerunning it over and over and over. They have to amortize it. And you sort of, in my mind, you lose a little bit of passage of time. It's like everything seemed to all be happening at the same time. Like here, it's like this thing happened last winter. This thing happened last spring. This weather. I attach a different environment to my memories, and I seem to have a better sense of when things happened. Whereas in Los Angeles, something either happened yesterday or 20 years ago, and it's all the same. And also, we have trees and leaves.
Yeah.
I mean, in Los Angeles, you got palm trees, but those are like telephone poles with beetle wigs on. It's like here we have like big lush trees, and then they change colors, which you're like, what? And then they all fall down. You're like, oh, and then they all come back. Oh my God!
The problem is from the fall down point until the spring. That's my issue.
Well,
and that's a good 4 months.
Well, for me, I cut that in half because I think even the winter and the snow is fantastic until like January 3rd. Because until then, it's all about Christmas and you're living in a snow globe and everything's magical and there's carols playing and this and that. Then January, February, March can be pretty brutal. That's kind of the dead time to me.
Yeah, I see. You're dead to me. You're dead to me,
Cleveland. I'm not even going to look at you.
Well, I'm from Pittsburgh, and I don't mind the area either. But there are a lot of different political views back there. And
no. There's only one.
And you're the oddball.
Well, I'm the weird one. I'm the one who drank the Kool-Aid. I'm making air quotes.
Well, even my daughter, after the horrible decision made the other day with Roe v. Wade, I talked to my daughter about my child about like making posters, and we should, be active, get your friends together. Let's just go stand on the corner. And she's like, basically, but Mom, we're preaching to the choir. Like everybody here agreed.
Right. Yeah.
And of course, I say, yeah, but that's not the point. The point is just that when something happens like this, you have to articulate it, and making signs and even marching in a circle or just camaraderie of friends. I think that's what matters. And when we look back at this date in our history, I would think that in Bama's mind, they're going to be like, where were you when? And what did you do? And I don't want them to think, I just turned on another episode of Barry. That's what I did. I want you to know that I was consciously very angry. And anyway, so I think that it's important to, be brave about your decisions no matter where you live. But I feel like in Pittsburgh, when I go back and visit, if I go to like the bar at night where we would all hang out, the North Park Lounge or whatever, I will still see friends from high school, and they truly, they just have a different point of view. And I have such a hard time looking past it because they look at me like, oh, you're one of them. Oh, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yes. You're just a tool as they wear their Trump hats.
Yeah. Or, like, oh, you're out there doing comedy. You're going to be on Leno? It's like, first of all, Leno has to be on the air. And it's exhausting.
Yes. No, you know what I've noticed? Have you noticed this too? You go back to the Midwest and there's this kind of underlying feeling among people where they're waiting for you to show that you've gone Hollywood, or that they need to bring you down a peg just a little bit. I got a phone call once from an agent I'd been waiting for. I was out to dinner with some friends, and the call came through. And I said, look, I have to take this. It's my agent. I didn't even think twice that nobody in Ohio has agents. I was just my agent. And I was walking away to go take the call, and I heard one of my friends say to the other, oh, his agent is calling. And it was like, oh, you were just waiting for something like that. And there always seems to be this thing. If I talk about famous people, I can never just say their first name. I say, oh, I had a thing. I met Kelsey Grammer, and we blah, blah, blah. If I just say I was talking to Kelsey, then it's like, oh, look at who is on first name basis. They're just kind of waiting.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. It's like a defensiveness.
I don't know. Yeah.
But it is a Midwest mentality. And when I say Midwest, I mean 25 miles out of LA all the way to Boston.
Yeah, that's the big basic middle, and then the very slim edges are
Then get on an airplane, and everything you see in between is Midwest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you have, obviously you have a life, you have friends, you have family, and they don't feel that way. And certainly not everybody in Cleveland feels that way. So is there like a scene? Is there good restaurants? Or is there art? What is happening? Tell me.
There is. We have a lot of that stuff here. We've got great art, great museums, history museums, art museums. We have a fantastic symphony orchestra. We've got all kinds of stuff going on here. And I will say we are very good at taking care of our parks. And we have acres and acres of parks, ravines, rivers, and you can just hike forever, and it never stops being beautiful. It's like you get tired of it. It's like, okay, I'm going to turn this corner. It better not be. Oh my God!
You fucking rabbit! I hate rabbits.
Oh my God! Could you pose less adorably for 1 second in your little rabbit life? So it's all every sunset's beautiful. The rain, the thunderstorm, the fireflies, we've got it all. I have a circle of friends, and I'm not terribly like go out. I don't go to bars or anything like that. Right. I'll go out and get something to eat or see a movie, whatever. But I have a small circle of friends, and we do things, and we have the same interests, and
they're normal.
We all. Yeah. I find that lately there's always a percentage of the talk. I'm starting to kind of work it out in my head, the percentage of all discussion among me and my peers that is about nostalgia and how it used to be. And I don't want that to get too big, because that scares me, because then you're just like those old people that meet at Perkins Pancake House like once a week. And remember?
Perkins, that's so funny.
We had 3 channels.
Well, I agree. And I feel like if you don't keep up with technology in at least the way you listen to music, maybe, or at least in some ways, if you don't keep up, you're just going to be left behind. Like there's no advantage to stopping learning, to stop learning.
Right. I agree.
Interesting. Well, listen, I'm excited to hear about your first heist.
Okay.
Oh, also, I wanted to say that you are working on a documentary right now. And like you told me earlier, it's really consuming your entire life. And the documentary is very specific. It's about children's television shows in a certain region in the Ohio Valley, or what?
In the Cleveland area. We were a major market back in the day, and it's a history of the people who basically created kids programming here in the Cleveland area. They were very important to like the baby boomers and a couple of generations of kids who grew up, and now their memories are getting really blurry in the population. Many people don't remember them at all, and so I'm gathering what you can of like still photos and rare clips and interviews like crazy. I'm putting stuff together. Found some really interesting stuff, and I'm doing a documentary about them. And I've shown it to people from different cities, and they're saying, "Oh, we should have that for Chicago. We should have that for Pittsburgh, whatever." And I think people could. It's kind of fun. I've actually went back and I've had all their old sets. I've gotten pictures of all the old sets of these shows digitized, and so I actually introduce the segments from within the sets, and I play with the props and stuff. And people haven't seen this in years and years, and it's kind of a fun idea.
That is a really good idea. Oh my gosh!
I could click in with an old TV remote control clicker, and I'm in the next set. And
a laugh! So it's all this multimedia stuff, and I'm trying to think of a show out of Cleveland. Did you say Romper Room? Is that out of Cleveland?
Well, Romper Room was a franchise show, so we had our own. So there is a segment about Romper Room. I appear in the Romper Room classroom, and I show the stuff, and I talk about it. I have the magic mirror, so I can actually do a thing at the end where I address people, we've got like a bunch of those, and I'm finishing. I've got like 2 more segments to do, and I'm all done. So it's coming. I'll send you it.
So fun! Oh, I'd love to see it. But what's the plan to get it up on? Will it get sold by somebody, or will it be?
Well, it'll be it'll be broadcast here on a local channel for us old people, and then maybe a film festival or so, and then probably I'll just throw it on YouTube so that everybody can see it. Because
Definitely.
like I think the audience for this is, and I keep pushing myself I work on this every day because I'm so aware that the audience for this is literally dying. You know, it's like the people who remember this stuff that goes way back. There's fewer of them every year. So
that's so amazing. What a great project to like pick something out like that and then to flesh it out so thoroughly and do it in a modern way with the technology now.
Oh, yeah. I'm doing all kinds of effects, and it's kind of like moving images all over the place and hopefully making it visually interesting while you're watching it and not just a history lesson. Yeah. And it's also, these people are really important to like millions of people. And because they didn't get recorded a lot, because their memories faded, I'd like to create something and leave it in the world in their name and say, hey, this is what a bunch of people did for kids that were sitting around after school or, you know, whatever, and teaching them and showing them stuff and whatever, being goofy and wearing costumes and entertaining. And it meant a lot to a lot of people.
Yeah. Like there was a lot of heart in it.
Yeah.
It was people teaching, but trying to do it in a creative way. I know that I have to learn anything in a creative way, you know, rather than just being lectured. So I'm trying to think some of the shows like Captain Kangaroo. Where was that?
That was national. So we all saw it.
But where was that out of?
Oh, probably Los Angeles, New York or Los Angeles.
Oh, of course.
That wasn't a regional. Yeah.
Well, because I mean, Mr. Rogers was in Pittsburgh, but that was national.
That's right.
But that was national.
It was but it started in Pittsburgh. It was a Pittsburgh thing originally that went national, so that everybody saw it. And I'm doing the stuff that we just did here.
Sure. No, I know, but I'm just trying to think. So, what are some of the other shows in Cleveland that they did then?
In Cleveland? Oh, well, Cleveland. I don't think anyone remember these names. They're names that here in Cleveland, the old people remember a guy named Captain Penny. There is a guy who played a character, an elf kind of character named Barnaby. He introduced Popeye cartoons. I'm going to send you this segment because this guy is deserving of a movie. His life, and kids loved him, and he was so kind, and so he connected with them like crazy. But he himself, when he was 8 years old, was abandoned and lived sleeping on porches and in parked cars, and occasionally would like con his way into living in people's houses for a while. And he grew up and became an entertainer, and he began chasing applause. Even as a 10-year-old, he'd be like in minstrel shows, like chasing applause because he couldn't get love. Wow. And he worked on his career. He had 20 different shows before he landed on this character that became huge in Cleveland. And he made all these kids feel special by giving them a character he himself never had, which was an adult he could never trust. He could ever trust. So he became that, yet at the same time, he got all this love as this character, and he began to feel invisible because, they all love this. It's me, where's me? And because his whole thing had been about chasing this approval, he was competitive with his own character, so constantly doing shows on his own and performing himself, but he never achieved the status of this character. It's an amazing story.
And is he alive?
No, he's gone. 2006, he's gone. Fascinating autobiography. And then as I'm doing all this research, I went back and got birth certificates and yearbooks, and I find that he was insanely creative. And I'll send you this bit so you get a sense of who he was. But his second best creation was Lynn Sheldon himself. And the way he would tell stories about his life at different points in life, you read interviews, and he's telling the same stories, but giving them different endings or playing with them. And in his mind, the past was malleable. It was material, and it was all about the story, getting back to Storyworthy. He made his life stories because that's what his currency was. That was his social currency, stories and being creative and using imagination. And it was always about the story. And he was the most talented person to ever come out of the state, I think.
Wow.
I'll send you the link on it.
That's so interesting. Wow. So let me ask you something, and then we're going to get to your story. Do the people in Ohio know how lucky they are that they have you? Like the people in Cleveland.
I tell them all the time.
Do you get invited to good, fancy stuff? I mean, I hope that you're invited to all the good shit. Are you invited?
No, I get invited to things, but I keep a pretty low profile here because when I came back here, I never wanted to be the guy who's like, I went and wrote for these shows and I made good. I don't want to be that. I'm not that. There was a time in my life and it was wonderful, but I'd rather just people find this documentary and love that. Yeah, and that'd be fun.
And what's the name of the documentary?
Right now, it's just called The Golden Age of Kids TV, Cleveland. And then it opens up the possibility of doing it in other cities.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Oh, it's such a good idea. I'm excited for you.
Oh, thanks.
You guys, You hear him talking, Dan O'Shannon. He is a producer and a writer known for Modern Family is a big thing. I feel like I know you a lot from that. I mean, I guess because it's more current.
I worked with Danny, and you know Danny really well.
Forever, yeah. And then, of course, Cheers and Frasier. But those shows, you know, really are older now, as it were.
Oh, yeah.
I don't mean older, I mean dated.
Well, they are. It's like I teach college students now, and sometimes, and you know, you talk about Cheers, and I say, look, I could never write Cheers. Cheers couldn't be done now. The lead character was a womanizer, and it was all about the next girl and the next girl and the next girl, and every time he made a conquest, all the people in the bar would high five and praise him, and then it would be on to the next. And if I started to write that now, I couldn't get through it. I couldn't do it. And it's good to know that I've changed, but just our point of view has changed like crazy. So yeah, things get dated.
I never really thought of it that way. I mean, Cheers. Yeah. I haven't watched it in so long. So
it's got an amazing reputation.
I haven't thought of the dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was always about the next girl for him.
And what about Frasier? Was that a little, because that's more of a smarter show, as it were?
And that was about, it was a smart show, but it was also a show that because Frasier was so much more than just somebody. He didn't want to just, he was attracted to women, but he wanted a relationship. He was about his heart. He was about trying to make the world better. He had loftier goals as a character. He kept falling prey to his own foibles, like we all do, but it was a different kind of direction that show was going in.
Yeah, plus it was more about his brother and his father and the family dynamic, because that was the main set, was the family dynamic.
Right.
Interesting. And so I know you've been working on this documentary. Have you been writing as well? Because you've written two really, one incredibly significant book and one the funniest book I've ever read in my life. The significant book in 2012. And I say significant because I work in a bookstore and we have this book and it's pretty thorough. It's called What Are You Laughing At? A Comprehensive Guide to the Comedic Event. So it's just this very, very dense read. It's not that funny. But you pull apart jokes, and not just jokes, but the tension in the room, and you show how it's a back and forth. It's pretty intense. Yeah,
it's really just an analysis of comedy and what can make it work. There's no comedy that always works. There's nothing that's always funny to all people. So you have to decide, then you look at it as, well, what are the variables that can make something work? You know, and when something doesn't work, what variables could that be about? And it's mapping out the landscape of variables is what it's really about. And just studying the event. A lot of theorists, they study the jokes, take apart the joke, and they don't take apart the event. You know, what was actually happening in this moment that this joke came across,
And so you might say that one of the variables could be the camera angle on the actor, and they turn their head and they deliver the line, or they do this and deliver the line.
Well, I'll give you a great example, but it's going to take you like 1 minute. If we could eat that up.
I have more than that.
I'll give you two. Okay. There was as a kid, I was obsessed with what made people laugh because I wasn't funny, and I wanted to be. And so I constantly, when someone was laughing, it wasn't because of this, it was because of that. And I was just in my head working it out. And there was a laugh that took me 15 years to figure out. And it was a laugh on the soundtrack of an episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show that aired when I was 15. And in the episode, Mary goes on a date with her boss, Lou Grant. And they've been friends for a while, and they decide to see if there might be more there. And it culminates in a scene in her apartment, and they're very awkward, and they're sitting on the couch, and they sort of go in for this kiss, and they're a little nervous and shy. And as they're going in for the kiss, they both sort of realize, what are we doing? We're just friends. And they start giggling. And then you hear this laughter from the studio audience. It's a loud laugh, as it was intended to be, but then it doesn't kind of roll out in this gradual way that big laughs usually did at the end of a sitcom. It kind of tapered sort of suddenly. It didn't cut off, but it sort of tapered suddenly. And I remember as a kid thinking there was something weird or off or disappointing about it, but I had no idea what it could be. 15 years later, I do an episode of Cheers, and I've written a bit for Norm, where he starts talking about how he's going to get off his ass and get a job and stop drinking beer and tell his wife he loves her, but he's only doing it, playfully, and he can't even get through the idea of getting a job without making himself laugh. So in the middle of his speech, he starts laughing. And then I hear this laugh from the studio audience, loud laugh and a sudden taper. And I look at George Wendt, and I realize what I was listening to on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And what it was the reason that laugh was like that. It was a laugh in the right place. It was where the punchline. Do you have a guess?
No. I'm thinking it's because he doubted himself.
No. See, that's the thing. Everyone looks to the content of the material. In both cases, the studio audience thought they were seeing a blooper happen. In both cases, the actors were in the middle of doing something and started giggling. And the audience said, oh, they messed up, ha, ha, ha. But the scene keeps going. Now they have to shut down and be quiet because the scene keeps going. They were mistaken.
Wow.
So it wasn't about the material. It was about the event that happened. And you have to understand that that studio audience was having a very different event with different possibilities than you watching it at home. You would never make that mistake. You would never think it was a blooper in the middle of a show.
So take it back to Mary Tyler Moore. So when they start making out.
Well, they start going in for a kiss, and then they're going for a kiss, and then one of them goes and starts to giggle, and then they both start laughing. The studio audience, they're messing up. But what it is they're realizing, oh, we weren't meant to be together. This is silly. But the audience got the wrong idea because they're used to seeing bloopers where the actors laugh.
Yeah.
Same with George Wendt later in the Cheers episode. He's in the middle of talking and he giggles. That's the value of understanding all the variables, understanding the event of comedy, not just the material. Because you'll keep digging through that material looking for why that laugh happened. You won't find it.
Shit, man. Do you think comedians think this way? Because, I do comedy. I do stand up almost every day of the week. But I've never thought this way.
No, I have a very analytical bent because I was not, as I always say, I was not naturally funny. And so I had to sort of work it out in my head. It's very analytical even as a child. And when I started doing stand-up, I was 18 or 19. And I remember I went on stage and I wrote jokes about my family. I wrote jokes about sex. I wrote jokes about girlfriend and sex and school and politics and whatever. And some weeks I would kill and some weeks just nothing. And I couldn't figure it out. And I started thinking in terms of the event. And I thought, what is the audience going through? Well, from the moment they hear the sound of my name, they're getting an idea of who I am, or they're creating an idea in their heads of who I am. And then I go dancing over to the mic, and I looked like I was 12 back then. So if I talk about sex or politics, I'm going against what they're thinking of me.
Sure.
Now, a really strong comedic character could bend them to whatever he or she wants or they want. But I was not that. I was still new. And I decided, like judo, let's use their force. Let's use what they're bringing to the table in my favor. So the next week I got rid of anything that was worldly. I didn't talk about politics or world events or sex or anything. And I wore a sweatshirt that was a little bit big on me, and I amped up my nervous energy. Not in a cutesy way, but enough.
Yeah.
And suddenly jokes that had worked huge. Jokes that had been huge got applause. And I think of that as the night I joined my act. Because until that night, I thought my act was the jokes. It was the material. The material was the act. The act is the thing that's happening in that room. And that audience is always, with every joke, asking subconsciously, who are you? Because we are now in a social situation where you are in control. We have to be quiet. So who are you? Every joke tells them who you are, even if it's not about you. It tells your point of view. So now my personality was infusing every joke, and every joke was reinforcing my personality. Now there was an act. Now there was a person on stage. I had been just an anonymous delivery system for material before. Now
Sure.
I was a thing they could have a relationship with and feel about. And I learned a lot of lessons after that. I learned that if I seemed at all too needy, if I was asking them more or less to like me, it gave them the opportunity to say no. And then that made everyone uncomfortable. So you had to have this kind of confidence or kind of like a drive that said, I'm going to be okay whether you like me or not, but isn't this going to be fun?
Yeah.
So all this analysis was always going through my head.
Wow, that's intense. That's a lot going through your head. I'll tell you that. Yeah. But I hear you because you are training the audience essentially. From the minute you get on stage, they're taking you in. They watched you get on stage. They heard your name. They're taking you in. And then as soon as you make your first joke, if you cut them off and start talking again, then they have been taught to only laugh for about 10 seconds and you're going to cut them off. And then the next joke, they're not going to laugh the same. Do you think that's true?
I think it's like, it depends. Now, some people are strong enough in their characters that they can take a character, they can go on stage and everyone can have an idea who they are. And then they suddenly turn it. And if they're strong enough, the audience will refocus and re-rack and go on the journey with them. But I was not that forceful as a personality. Right. And so I just kept reinforcing, yes, I'm that innocent boy next door thing. Meanwhile, I was writing really sinister jokes for the comic that would go after me, who had a really sinister act.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Is that right? You were writing his material?
Yeah, because I could write all these jokes that I couldn't do as me.
For yourself. Yeah. How much did you get a joke?
Oh, gosh. Back then, it could be anything from like Yeah, it could be $20. Bruce Baum came through town. He was the first guy who was like came and just bought a whole bunch of jokes. And I remember he bought one for like $75. I was like so thrilled.
He's such a great guy. He's a wonderful person, actually. Yeah, he's played Story Smash with us.
Oh, that's nice. I haven't seen him in years and years. He wouldn't remember me, I'm sure.
Oh, yes, he would. Of course he would. Yeah, he came down to the Improv and played Story Smash, and it was silly. And he came up with some very, very good jokes. Very good jokes. You know, sometimes, because now, like the other night with these judges that are so smart, like somebody was on stage talking, well, see, it's not going to work now, but the point is they were talking about Disney and they were talking about somebody doing heroin, and basically Blanca Patch said something about, oh, is that one of your favorite Disney heroines? Or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh my God, that was great. You know?
Well, that is a habit of mind that you develop. And I've talked to people about this too, especially young comics, that almost no matter what the conversation is, half of you is hopefully invested as a human in what the other person is saying. Mm-hmm. The other half of you is hearing every single word and keeping a list, a pile of all these words and ideas together, so that if you can connect one to another one in a funny way and have it maybe call back to something earlier, you're connecting raw material and data and pieces, like Lego pieces, that you're going to snap together to make a joke. But you always have to but the thing is, it's so important to keep that human half of you, because let's say you're telling me a story about like a death in the family and you're really emotional, but you happen to say something that would make a really great joke that connects with something you said earlier. I'll recognize it in my head, but I always have to forfeit that for the reality of the conversation. And a lot of young comics don't get that. It's like the joke is first, you know. Yeah. But you develop that where you're, and I, to this day, it's like I'm always collecting the words as they talk. And I'm sure Danny's like this and all these people. You know?
Well, no, I hear you. Even I do that to an extent. I think,
I'm sure.
But isn't it exhausting as much as you do it?
It's, you know, I think it becomes so much of how you think and how you look at the world that it's second nature.
Because it's your job. It's basically, it was your job. I mean, it was your job,
was my job
for years and years and years. And so now it's just a habit.
Yeah, it's a habit of mind. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, listen, let's hear about your first heist. All right, you guys, wherever you are, put your hands together for Dan O'Shannon.
Thank you. I'm sorry, boy, are they going to applaud this long? Oh my God, you guys, thank you. All right, I want to tell my story. Stop it. I just assume they're still clapping. Okay. I was 13 and my family, we lived on a farm, about 30 miles east of Cleveland, Ohio. And I mean, it was really far from the city. We had no sidewalks. We're like a quarter of a mile from the next farm. And I'd never been that far away from Cleveland before. I think the maps of the day don't even go past this section of Ohio. I think after that, the maps just show like sea monsters and stuff because no one had explored yet that far away from the city. And I was 13 and found myself in possession of a quarter. And I don't remember how I had a quarter because money was hard to come by then for all of us, but particularly me. But somehow I ended up with a quarter. I wish I knew how I got it. It was a very, very hot, wet day, like we have these wet blanket days in summer. And I decided to take my quarter and go to the IGA store, which is a little convenience store in downtown Leroy Township. Now, downtown Leroy Township was called 5 Points because it's where 5 roads merged. We had a gas station, an ice cream place called the Triple D, Dairy Desserts Drive-In, and the IGA store, and I think a bar. And that was it. And it was the nearest thing to civilization. And so I started walking, as you do on a hot, wet afternoon. And it was probably about 4 miles from my house. So that's a long walk for a kid. Yeah. Walking. But I think I got a quarter. This is great. I get to the IGA store. No idea what I want to spend my quarter. I just want to spend my quarter. And I start looking around the store. And it's great. That time when you have the money in your pocket and you haven't spent it, it's almost like I could have anything. But the second you pay for one thing, it's like, oh, it's that magical feeling of I can do anything is gone. But I'm looking around, and I'm by the magazines, and I spot a Playboy magazine. Now, I've spotted them before, believe me. I have a story about the first time. But and I no one's looking, and I sort of take it down and flip through it, and I see some pictures, and every cell in my body now starts telling me loudly, you want to own this magazine. And I'm thinking, I want to own this magazine. And so I needed a plan, and I've always been a planner. And most of the stories I tell about my life is about having a plan and then going awry because I've missed something. But so the plan I come up with is that I'm going to buy an issue of the local newspaper, which was the Painesville Telegraph. because apparently we lived in 1880. The Painesville Telegraph. I'm going to slide the magazine into the newspaper,
Sure.
and then I'm going to buy the newspaper. Now, the newspaper is only a dime, which gives me 15 cents change, which is exactly the cost of a chocolate shake. So I'm going to get porn and ice cream. This is going to be the greatest trip of my life, right?
Still
and
would
so,
be.
Oh yeah, believe me. They both would give me a headache too. So if I put the magazine into the newspaper, right? So first step done. All right, my heart's already beating a little bit, but I'm thinking I'm going to go through this. I've got this, and I start walking up and down the aisles. And by the way, I'm in the store. The woman who works at the counter is in the store, and various farmers are coming in and out or whatever. So this next section is where I become the worst silent movie actor in the world, where I pretend to browse. And I'm looking, and I pick up a can of tuna fish, and I look at it, I check the label, and I put it back down. And then I pick up a competing brand of a can of tuna fish, and then I look at the first one again, as though I'm comparing. What am I? And I'm looking stuff. I like squeezing celery and stuff. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm looking. What will I buy? I'm really trying to put across the fact that I'm an innocent shopper. I have a newspaper, and I may get something else. And okay, so I've done enough of that. I decide I'm going to get in line, and I wait in line. Heart's beating, but I'm looking. I'm looking at the door. I'm just looking at the door thinking, when I'm on the other side of that, it's porn and ice cream. Okay. I've just got to get to that door. And the person in front of me finally, now it's my turn. And I walk up, good day, madam. I mean, who am I, right? Good day, madam. I'm 13, But I'm trying so hard to be casual that I'm like flop-sitting. Good day, madam, So I put the newspaper, and there's people behind me in line. I put the newspaper down, and I believe that will be 10 cents. And I get the quarter, and I put it out there. And she puts the quarter in the drawer. My heart is, I can hear my heart bang, bang, bang. But, porn ice cream, nothing's going to stop me. And she's making the change, and she reaches down, she sees the paper, and she turns the paper on the surface of the counter to see what the headline is. And the Playboy magazine slides right out because it's got that very slick cover. It just slides out.
Right.
And if you were alive in 1975, and you remember a day when the world or time stopped for about an hour, that was me. That was that moment. And there was this moment, everyone's looking at me, and the ball is in my court. And I don't know what my options are. I either picked the best or the worst option. I cannot decide. But it was to be loudly indignant. Is that what I think it is?
I'm sure.
Is that pornography? And I'm flop-sweating, but I'm committed now. And I can't stop, because if I stop talking, it gives someone else a chance. I'm a kid. I come into my local store to buy a newspaper, and this is what you try to pawn off on me? I think I said fob off on me. You're trying to fob off on me? Pornography? You're lucky I don't tell my parents. Sort of a message. Let's not tell my parents,
Yeah.
And she's looking at me. Her eyes are big, and everyone's like, no one knows what to do with this madman that I've become. And I keep going, and I'm. It'll be a cold day, and where before I come back and patronize this establishment again. I'm Frasier, But at one point I said, and you know what? You can keep the change. I don't even want your paper. I bribed them. It's like she's going, well, a quarter, okay. So I go storming up before anyone can say anything, and they're slack-jawed now. No one knows what to do. And I storm out of the place, trying to slam the door behind me, but that's one of those air compressor things so the door doesn't close. And I storm home. Now, I don't know if you've ever stormed anywhere, like that. You can storm about maybe 100 feet. Before it becomes this kind of slow, resigned trudge. So I'm sorry, now it's 99 degrees, and it's like a shower. It's so wet. I'm storming. I'm so mad at the IG, trying to get pornography to a kid who just wants. And then eventually I'm just kind of like, I lost my quarter. I didn't have porn. I didn't have ice cream. I walked 8 miles. I'm going to die. And then a car would drive by from the direction of the IGA store. And I would resume the storming because I can't believe I'm so mad. I've got to keep it up. And then the car would dwindle to a little point and get out of sight. And then it'd be the slow trudge. I don't have a quarter. I don't have porn. I don't have ice cream. My life sucks. And then another car, and I'm so mad. I trudged and stormed all the way home. That's my story of my first heist.
That is so funny. But you had to go back to that store another day because that's the only place around, right?
Oh, yeah. No. Yes,
so
absolutely.
What happened the next time you went? Did you ever see that clerk again?
Well, no, I made sure that, like, if I was with my parents and my parents needed to go in, I always made sure I'd stay in the car or this or that. I mean, it was a long, long time before I physically walked into that building again.
I believe it, because this is a commitment you have blown, especially in that part of the country. It's so rural, and that was the only place to get anything, and you blew it.
Well, I'm kind of amazed that like none of the adults who had been there like happened to be at our church or something and like point me out or whatever, But no, I got away with it. But I think just acting insane was my key.
I think that was really brilliant. I mean, nobody would have expected that, especially not from a kid. But I thought that at one point you said the quarter will pay for the 10 cents and the
15 cents for the shake. Yeah.
So you were. Oh.
I was out all 25 cents. I got nothing back.
And you were trying...
No paper. I didn't even get a Painesville Telegraph.
That is the Painesville Telegraph. Beep, 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 beep. Painesville Telegraph coming through for your news, traffic, and weather here in Painesville. Beep, 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 beep. That is so specifically funny. I swear that I see that as a short film or even a graphic novel, something, because that is such a funny, I just see every single moment of that.
That's so funny.
Poor little Dan O'Shannon, head down, got nothing.
Yeah. No.
And then start the storming. You got to storm if they're watching you.
So mad at them. Can you believe that they would corrupt a child like myself? I was innocent until today. I'll never be the same.
Playboy was such a big deal in the 70s, that magazine.
If you got a minute, I'll tell you the first time I ever saw one.
Yeah, tell me.
Third grade, someone found one. I was living, back then we were living more in the suburbs, so it wasn't the rural kind, it was the suburbs. And somebody had found a Playboy in someone's trash on the way to work. On the way to school. And so in the schoolyard, we're all looking at this. And it's funny because we're all like 9 years old and we're all having these very different reactions. Some boys are just giggling. Some are confused. I was somehow energized, but I did not understand why. I just knew that I couldn't tear my eyes off the page.
Yeah.
I had no idea why, but it's just all I could do was look at this, and that's all I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so the kid couldn't bring it to school or like bring it home, so he ditched it in the woods, but we all knew where it was.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And we had a dog at the time, and my brother and I would always fight about who took out the dog. When the dog had to go out, we'd actually put the leash on her and walk her over to the woods, where she'd go and get a little bit of walking in and stuff like that. And we'd always, you walk her, I walked him last time, or I walked her, you walked.
Sure.
But suddenly we weren't arguing anymore because I was very happy to walk over to the woods where this magazine was ditched. And so I think she has to go out. And I'd take her to the woods and tie her to a tree. And I would just stare at this magazine. Nothing else but stare. I was a kid. Right, and then I'd walk her back home.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where it's like, oh, she has to go out again. Really, Dan? I think she went out like half an hour ago. No, she's got to go. And so at some point, my family's starting to worry that our dog has diabetes or something, because so this happened throughout like the fall.
Yeah.
And as it's getting colder and rainy, the magazine eventually disintegrates. There's nothing left. And by the way, I've kept going until there's nothing left but little tiny corners of pages hoping to get something, and nothing left. There's all this mush. No, maybe a breast. No. Okay, gone.
Because it's been wet and it's gotten muddy and there's like plants on it.
And
I can feel that. I can feel that
it's
paper.
Moldy and so I went long past there was anything to see. And then of course, there's no reason for me to walk the dog. But now the dog has become conditioned to going out like 5 times a day. And it's like, she has to go out again. No, she doesn't. No, she has to go out. So suddenly now I'm walking this dog that I love the dog, but it's like, 5 times a day funny. Now. Like, come on. So that was the first time
You trained her. You trained the dog.
Yeah, I unwittingly trained her to make me walk outside to the woods. So it's like, you want to walk to the woods? You get to walk to the woods. And so I did that.
That is funny, like back in the 70s. I mean, I remember, Playboy magazine. Well, I mean, in terms of it being like, it was like supposedly like, oh, it's a sophisticated, it's highbrow, like, the articles. And it was.
My brows went pretty high.
I know, but it was like but it was really soft.
It was supposed to be,
It was always very soft.
Right.
It was nothing. There weren't even 2 people in the pictures, really.
That's right. That's right. You're right. Exactly right. It was people posing, and sometimes somewhat carefully, but you know what? You're a 10-year-old boy in Cleveland in 1972 or 3 or whatever, and there's nothing like it. You just what?
No, for sure. But I'm just thinking,
do my parents know about this?
Like, now, is there an equivalent to that sort of soft porn, or do kids just get right to the, whatever?
I assume they just get right to it. It's just all so darn available. It's
I
like not
know.
only did people my age, every drop of it that came along, it was like gold, and it sort of in a way taught you a little bit at a time.
I know.
But and also it really trained your imagination. Whereas now there's nothing for the imagination to do. It's all just there, and it's all easy to find. You don't even have to work for it. And I'm one of those old people. By my day, what we had to do? We had to sneak it out of your friend's dad's basement and hide it between our mattresses and blah blah blah. You just
I know.
you with your porn.
I know. It's also.
And then people before me were like, we had to get married.
Yeah, well, and we were forced to have our babies. Oh, here we are again.
Yeah. Oh.
It is such an odd time. It's such an odd time. It really is. But this has been so nice that you've come on and talked to me, Dan, because I know you're very busy, the documentary and all that. So it's really nice for you to take this time out for me. Thank you.
Thank you always. I'm sorry. I feel like I went on in 100 directions, but thanks for going with me.
No, it's all so fun, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the documentary, or even parts of the documentary, because I'm sure it's so. I mean, when I was a kid, I was watching, Captain Kangaroo. Like you said, it was national. Romper Room, Zoom. That was a big one.
Yeah, sure, I remember that.
Out of Boston, because they said Boston, Mass, 13325. Send it to Zoom.
It's still in there. Yeah, that's awesome.
But those, like, I remember in second grade, Mrs. Goldberg, she let us watch Captain Kangaroo, like, in the room.
Oh my gosh.
Such a big deal back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I don't think I'd have the patience to do a show for children.
No, not a show where kids could be there live. If it was just you and a camera and props and actors and whatever, that's one thing. But if kids are there live where they're getting like loud and impatient and stuff, I'd last a day.
Kids and animals.
No, I'm not going to do a show for animals.
Hey, you guys, make sure you check out Dan O'Shannon's book, The Adventures of Mrs. Jesus. I forgot to mention this. Is it still in print? Do you know?
I don't know. I mean, maybe Amazon still has some, or maybe there's someone.
I'll bet you The Adventures of Mrs. Jesus is out there. It's from 2014, but it was this square little book that we sold at Skylight Books where I work. And that season, it was like November, December that it came out. It was one of those, like a stocking stuffer book. So we knew we'd sell a lot, because I think it was only $10 or $15 as well. And man, we sold hundreds of that book at our store, because it's so funny.
So if you don't want to pay the money, just slip it into a newspaper and just buy the newspaper. That always works.
That's all you got to do. Get yourself some ice cream and The Adventures of Mrs. Jesus. All right, you guys. One more time on behalf of the very talented Dan O'Shannon. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
My name is Christine Blackburn, saying, make it a story-worthy week.
Thanks for joining us on the Storyworthy Podcast. We'll be back next week with all new stories. Subscribe to Storyworthy on iTunes and visit the Storyworthy website at storyworthypodcast.com.